Hey everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and since it's halfway through 2017, I thought I would take a little break from doing an album review for this video, and I thought I would share with you what my favorite records of 2017 are so far. 16 albums that I am going to talk about here in this video, and before we get in, just want to let you know, just be aware, this is all my opinion, so don't be offended if there's an album you don't see on this list, because, these are my favorites so far, and, some of those other records that you may remember I gave positive reviews for and stuff, I still like them, and some of them are probably going to turn up on my top 50 list at the end of the year, but these are just my favorites so far. So, let's begin. And I made a little PowerPoint, like I did with the top 50 list. Alright, so, to start, at number 16, is the second self-titled album from Eaters, who is a band you may not know, but I do know, because I have a pretty interesting connection with Andrew Savage, who is, in the band Parquet Courts, and also is the head at an independent label called Dull Tools, that apparently this is one of the bands signed to that label. He had sent me their music on vinyl before, but, had never got around to listening to their first record. But then, out of the blue, middle of May, he sends me a vinyl copy of this new album over here, and I would say I'm definitely very impressed with this album. A very inventive mix of new wave, krautrock, and IDM together into this really, solid and, very creative dance record that, you should definitely, check out sometime. If you like a little, 9 Inch Nails and industrial music, or some of those more kind of weird new wave kind of artists like Gary Newman, I hear a little Devo in there. And, if you like some good, independent dance music, well then I think you're going to like this record. Number 15, this is one I just reviewed, and that is the new DeMarco album, This Old Dog. In my opinion, Mac has really stepped up his game as a songwriter here on this new album of his. Considering I'm not necessarily the biggest DeMarco fan, I mean, he seems like a really cool guy, and definitely seems pretty easy to admire, but I do find his music at times can get a little underwhelming. However, here he really did, improve on all fronts, pretty much. This is by far some of his most mature songwriting to date, and also, probably his most ambitious production-wise. It's production-wise, it's definitely probably his most polished record yet, but he definitely production sounds really nice, and also incredibly ambitious record as well. The set of songs is very diverse, from folk ballads to beautiful, new wave inspired synth tracks, and whatnot. And of course, that song, Moonlight on the River, that's awesome. Excuse me. Next, at number 14, is Low Straitjackets with What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Low Straitjackets, which is a Nick Lowe tribute album from the guitar instrumental band. I believe they're from California, something like that. And a little shout out to Yep Rock, because this album is on that label, but I recently bought this on a vinyl at the Soundgarden in Baltimore, and it sounds great on vinyl. I thought it was cool to see, Low Straitjackets take Nick Lowe's very genuine and masterful melodies and really, put their own twist on them, because Nick Lowe gets a lot of appreciation as an amazing lyricist, but not so much as a melodist, which is such a shame. His melodies are just, he created some amazing melodies, and to see Low Straitjackets really kind of, you know, you know, turn them on their head is definitely, pretty cool. Turning some pop rock melodies into kind of Western rock kind of ballads. It's pretty much, it's playful, raucous, and beautiful all at the same time. Number 13 is Neil Cicierega with his third installment in the Mouth mashup album series that he's put together, Mouth Moods. And let me tell you, this album, is insane. It's insane. In the best of ways, I would say. If you're going to make a mashup album, be sure to have some fun with it and really be creative with it, as well. And really use some songs that have some common ground to them. And Neil does just that with Mouth Moods, And I like how this record not only has some of the craziest, most creative mashups of pop songs that I've heard, period, but also like the album actually flows really well as a cohesive record. It's like an hour-long mashup epic that I just love. And also, you can pretty much, have many emotions while listening to this album, too. I love that about it. At some points, you'll be just laughing till you cry. At points, you'll be having an emotional musical experience. At other points, you will be like, huh, what is this? But, definitely, you're going to have fun with this record. It's highly addictive to listen to. Trust me. And Neil is a total genius of meme music. I would say that. Number 12, this is another one that I have reviewed. The new King Gizzard album, Flying Microtonal Banana. Not to confuse with Murder of the Universe, the one that just came out last week. Even though that was a pretty amazing record, by the way. This one is the first out of 5 studio albums that King Gizzard plans to release in 2017. And this one is yet another concept album as the band explores microtonal tuning and just the endless possibilities of, microtonality and how complex, those kind of, frettings are and stuff like that. It's a kind of, interval not usually heard in most Western music. So, Western music. So this is an album where you kind of have to, throw out everything you know about, traditional Western music out the window, pretty much. So, the concept is pretty awesome. They finally educated me on this, range of notes that I never even knew about. But not only is the concept cool, but amazing performances and chemistry beyond the instruments. The writing's good. The album flows pretty cool. Yeah, it's a great record. King Gizzard yet again did not disappoint. Number 11 is the new Spoon album, Hot Thoughts. Which, yes, I've reviewed this one as well. Definitely, very interesting, record for the band. Yeah, in my opinion, Hot Thoughts is probably Spoon's most ambitious record to date. It's definitely, yet another, but definitely one of, the best additions they've made to their discography, which, their discography is very diverse. You never really know what to expect on their next record. I wasn't expecting this, kind of sound on this record, but I definitely do love it. There's more keyboards on this thing than there are, guitars, but, they use these keyboards in a very creative way. The lyrics are definitely a little edgier here, but definitely very smart and poetic, definitely some of the best that I've heard since Ga 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 Ga, in terms of Britt Daniels' lyrics. And then of course, just, very diverse set of songs, ranging from the sexy, funky, and awesome title track, the kind of rising buildup of Whisper, I'll Listen to Hear It, the kind of disco-inspired groove of Can I Sit Next to You, and, the very kind of eerie, ambitious interludes that close out sides A and B. Pink Up and Us, which, by the way, the latter is one of the best sax improvisations you will hear this year. Number 10 is the new Ryan Adams album, Prisoner, which, some people have been clamoring me to review this, and yes, I am planning to review it sometime, just, don't know when yet, but Ryan Adams definitely, put together all the things that a good breakup album should have. It's definitely kind of a heartbreaking, difficult record emotionally, sort of dealing with his recent breakup with Mandy Moore. But it's also definitely got a sense of optimism and poignancy to it, and it actually has a good sense of catharsis to it for those, down and out times. And I like how it doesn't just wallow in melodrama, and also love the production on this thing. A nice tribute to 80s new wave and even arena rock as well. If you enjoy a little indie post punk from the 80s, maybe say the Smiths, or if you enjoy a little arena rock, maybe Bruce Springsteen is definitely kind of an influence here. Definitely check out this record. Next, at number 9, the new Major and the Monbacks album, Moonlight Anthems. Yet another band you probably never heard of, but believe me, you gotta hear them, because, they put out one of the best, rock albums of the year. You can't really put a label on them. It's a really unique blend of music they play, like indie rock, roots rock, R&B, and blues, and another shout out to Yep Rock Records, because this is another Yep Rock release, and one of 2 of the newest arrivals here on this list, as it came out in June. I'll get into the second one later, definitely really like this record. It definitely is a nice tribute to, music from, the 50s and the 60s and the 70s as well. Got kind of an old school tone to it. But also definitely does remind me a little bit of some of those rootsy kind of indie bands like Dr. Dog, Dawes, or Deer Tick. If you enjoy some of those bands, I think you're going to find something to like here. Because I am a pretty big Dr. Dog fan, so these guys were pretty much right up my wheelhouse right from the get-go. Number 8, the new Father John Misty album, Pure Comedy. My man Josh Tillman came through with yet another amazing album. I pre-ordered this bad boy on vinyl, so that should say something. And I'm so glad that it lived up to my excitement I've been having for it, ever since hearing the title track, Pure Comedy. Josh Tillman has really come out with, by far one of his most ambitious records yet. Probably his magnum opus at this point. I can't say it's better than I Love You, Honey Bear. I still think that's my favorite record of his, but this album, lyrically, he definitely this album sees kind of a sense of maturity for Josh Tillman as a songwriter, a little bit, sort of looking at his life, a little bit, a sense of self-deprecation that I do really like a lot, stuff like that. But then also sort of, showing himself as one of the most outspoken figures in folk rock, pretty much, with some of the, he does bring up some, pretty clever lyrics that do kind of poke fun at society and politics and stuff. So that, and also production-wise, some of the best production I've heard on a Father John Misty album, with complete with strings and horns and backing vocals, You know, a lot of critics have praised this album, and I am certainly no exception. You know, definitely will review that sometime soon. Number 15 is, no, I meant to say 7, sorry. But anyway, it's the new One in One's album, Clipper Ship. Singer-songwriter James Toth on this new record, you know, comes through with an album, definitely, you know, one of the best singer-songwriter albums of the year. Here, and, you know, I'm not really too familiar with his work, but I definitely do love what I'm hearing here on Clipper Ship. You know, the very poetic, beautiful lyrics that feel like these little memoirs, you know, that are really distinctive. And also some incredibly lavish instrumentation and stuff. You know, it's a short but definitely very interesting indie folk record, you know. And they're definitely, and the song Mexican Coke is like a perfect example of the songs Sacrificial and Mexican Coke are definitely two of the album's best songs, in my opinion. They definitely do kind of define what makes the album so great. But even better than that is at number 6, the new Laura Marling album, Semper Femina, which, you know, is a record sort of, you know, about feminism, but sort of dealing with it in kind of a, you know, challenging and, you know, sort of, kind of, introspective kind of way, you know, but like, you know, it's definitely not like a, you know, explicitly heartbreaking record, you know, it's definitely, got a sense of, you know, poignancy to it as well, and, you know, I definitely do think it is a kind of sentiment and message to it that even, you know, men could relate to, I think, to as well. You know, considering, you know, this is a guy talking about how much he loves this album. You know, and like, the instrumentals on here, they are sparse and stripped back, but still definitely very beautiful and, you know, complement her, you know, distinctive voice and, you know, lyrics beautifully. Number 5 is the new XX album, I See You, one of my favorite, like, indie pop records of the year. You know, I recently did review this one. I actually recently bought it on vinyl. I'm going to have to listen to it sometime. You know, I got it on vinyl, just, I got an album that I had already got on CD on vinyl just because I love this record so much. You know, I See You is definitely, you know, a very triumphant comeback for the indie pop band known as the XX, you know, and by far some of their most optimistic, you know, yet, if you look at the lyrics. And of course, like, you know, Romy and Oliver Sims' voices go really well together, have a lot of chemistry. And Jamie Smith comes through with some of his, you know, best production that I've heard on an XX album, even though I wouldn't say I have the best knowledge of the XX, but I would say I definitely love what I'm hearing here on I See You. And, you know, it would make sense that I gave this album a 9 out of 10 when I reviewed it, considering I gave an incredibly positive review for Jamie Smith's solo debut in Color, which, you know, he kind of brings some of those kind of atmospheric, cool sounds to this new record, too, and I love it. But on a more depressing note, at number 4 is the new Mount Eerie album, A Crow Looked at Me. A bit of a, you know, concept album. You know, singer-songwriter Phil Elverum puts together a concept album, you know, dealing with, like, a tragedy in his life, which is the unfortunate death of his wife, the Genevieve, who apparently was a cartoonist and a musician. So definitely a very, you know, challenging, you know, sort of, you know, somber release right there that definitely does require you to kind of be in that kind of, you know, in that solitude, that introspective moment for it to appeal to you. But still at the same time, it's very beautiful and poetic. as well. As well, and it's definitely, it feels kind of like relief to kind of, let all these feelings out and not just hide it as some secret, because it's better to just let it all out than to just bury it, and read it and stuff. I would say what the new Nick Cave album did for me in from 2016, this album did for me in 2017. Number 3, the second new arrival on my list, which is the new Fleet Foxes album, Crack Up. Yet another record I was absolutely looking forward to, in a sense that I pre-ordered this thing on vinyl, and it sounds great. And, it definitely lived up to my hype for sure. Fleet Foxes, after 6 years of studio album silence, come back with, definitely a record that sounds bigger, grander, and more fully realized than ever. I'm probably going to review it sometime, but just don't know when yet. But, so glad to see one of my favorite bands, of all time, come back with, an album that shows that even, years after a long hiatus, you can still crank out some very adventurous, intriguing, compelling, and beautiful indie folk songs. And Fleet Foxes did just that with Crack Up. And I would do anything in the world to see these guys live. So, the fact that they're on tour again as well is amazing. And, hopefully they'll come by Baltimore sometime. Alright, so now we're getting very close. My top 2 favorites of the year so far. Number 2. Probably the most obvious here on this list, but come on, you all know what this is, and he's the man. Kendrick Lamar. Damn, is this album fantastic. Kendrick, following his breakout album, To Pimp a Butterfly, comes through with definitely, some of his, grittiest, and most hard-hitting, but definitely some of his most, compelling, intriguing, and, and most kind of accessible songs to date, pretty much. So, for anyone out there who maybe thought To Pimp a Butterfly was, maybe a little hard to decipher, you can listen to this album, and you can definitely pretty much get the point of what he's talking about right away. He definitely, again, stays relevant as by far the greatest MC working today. And I like how he kept it kind of stingy with the features on this album, sort of focusing kind of on his own sort of POV, if you will. Even though the features of Rihanna, U2, and Zakari actually, surprisingly, were great on this record and really did add so much to the album, in my opinion. But even more impressive is the, list of producers on this album. The list too long for me to mention all in one video. In one video and stuff. And, there's definitely, not much more I can say other than, K-Dot's the man. Or Kung Fu Kenny's the man. That makes more sense. Alright, time for my number 1 of the year so far. And that is the new Perfume Genius album, No Shape. Really, by far my favorite, art pop album of the year. I don't necessarily know a whole lot about Perfume Genius, but I do know over the years his 4 records definitely have gained widespread acclaim and stuff like that, and I'm going to have to give his last few albums a listen. But, his new record, No Shape, is definitely, one word that I would definitely describe this album is cathartic, and optimistic as well. Now, cathartic, you can interpret it in a lot of different ways. It can be, interpreted like in lyrical sense, but I think in Mike Hadreas's case, it's very much happening sonically. I mean, the sound of this record is incredible, and the sounds so huge and epic, and very just lavish and grand, I would say. Even though Mike Hadreas's lyrics as well are definitely fantastic, and sort of talking about he does kind of talk about how he has kind of a hard time kind of dealing with people kind of ignoring him and stuff, and just kind of and also just kind of wishing he would just kind of live life without this kind of shape that he's in, pretty much, but not necessarily wallowing in heartbreak, really sort of being very poignant and optimistic about it, and some incredibly poetic lyrics on this album that I definitely can't help but admire, pretty much. And also, like, Mike Hadreas does show off his skills as a vocalist as well. Like the very haunting vocals on Run Me Through, and and also definitely there are some songs on here that just hit me right in the feels, like the final track, Alan, a tribute to his musical mentor, Alan Weifels, is like, I am almost moved to tears every time I listen to that song. It is just, it's so beautiful. Beautiful, and like, heck, even the collaboration with Ways Blood with the song Sides is definitely very touching and beautiful, and their voices just go amazing together. And I can't say enough nice things about this record. It is incredible, incredible, and I'm probably gonna review it sometime. Just don't know when yet, but check this thing out. So yeah, that's my list of my top 16 favorite albums of 2017 so far. And, I will see you for episode 162 of Album of the Day. See you later.